Welcome to Blind City. I had to lose my sight to find my vision.
Are you blind? Are you blind? Open your eyes. They lying every time, so I don't trust men, only trust God. I had to lose my sight before I could see the light.
Welcome to Blind City. See, Blind City is a condition. Crime, racism, and poverty. We have to put the word neighbor back into hood. I had over 31 surgeries and lost my sight and fight to glaucoma. I tried killing myself 3 times in one day, and I was unsuccessful. And then I heard a voice tell me, use your weakness as a strength to inspire and create awareness through Blind City, the podcast. I will address the issues that are plaguing our society, like poor education, that are turning our broken neighborhoods into the breeding grounds for prisons, bootleg preachers, crooked politicians that have my people dancing like strippers in the community. Let's talk about it, or we can flip tables like Jesus. Welcome to Blind City. This is Blind City, the podcast. I'm your host, Langford Cunningham, along with Dr. Porter. We are the therapy for these streets. And like I said before, the most dangerous man in the world is a blind man with a handgun. Welcome to Blind City. We are the therapy for these streets. Blind City, the podcast, 2021. Everybody, welcome back to the city. Thanks for pulling up. I want to give a shout out to the people, my citizens, for supporting Blind City, the podcast. I really thank you from the bottom of my heart, and I'm going to continue to rep the streets and try to make a difference in our communities across America. I got my partner, Mr. Sims, a.k.a. Frank Lucas. How you doing, man?
Yeah, I'm doing fine. How you doing today, Langford?
Oh, man, it's blessing blind.
Yes,
And when
sir.
I say blessing blind, I mean I'm still praising God when I'm blind.
Absolutely.
And I have another guest on the show who will be joining us for every segment, and I'm glad to have him on the team. He was a free agent, and I had to sign the deal. Dr. Porter, how you doing, man?
Hey, I'm blessed, brother. It's an honor to be a part of the Blind City podcast family now. I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, man, it's great to have you, man. We're going to be able to find a lot of solutions, man, and throw a lot of great ideas with you on the board so we can address some of these toxic issues in our community and also address the solutions to stop some of this toxic. So let me get right to the point. Excuse me. We had a difficult last year. A lot of things got exposed. We still dealing with the racism. We still dealing with the hate. We still dealing with the pandemic. And now we have the vaccine is coming out, being available. Still questions about that. And we still dealing with, are we in Revelations? I've been hearing a lot of rumors and other podcasts talking about we might be in Revelations. So we also have a guest host that will be on the show. He goes by the name of OG Ricky Wisdom. So we're going to get a lot of things addressed today and talk about and create great dialogue. But right now, I would like to address some of my critics, and I also like to address some thank yous to some people who have supported Blind City, the podcast. So, a.k.a. Frank Lucas, Mr. Sims, which one should I address first?
Whichever one to pick up your topic, 'cause we got 3 or 4 of them, so it doesn't matter.
Well, you sound like a gangster, don't you, Dr. Porter?
Yeah, he sound like a man that knows some things.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
That's right. Well, let me address the thank yous. Let's start with the positive. I'd like to thank all the people who have really gave Blind City a podcast a great start. My mother, Betty Cunningham, who has really been there for me. I want to thank her. I love you to death, Ma. And I also want to thank all the people, the citizens that have tuned in to Blind City podcast and telling me to keep going, Mr. C. That's what they call me. The young people call me Mr. C from juvenile detention. All the older heads call me Langford Cunningham.
Yeah.
So I go back and forth. But anyway, they tell me keep doing what you're doing. You represent the streets. You're speaking out on a lot of issues that are affecting our community, and it needs to be highlighted. So I'm going to continue to do that. So now I'm going to address the critics. So Dr. Porter, with you the doctor and the therapist, I've been having difficulties dealing with us, man. And when I say us, I'm talking about black people. And it seems like, man, we cannot come together and sit down and try to air out our differences, man. I don't know why that is so much a big issue. It seems like if we get into a disagreement, it turns out that nobody wants to deal with each other. Or they try to sabotage what you're trying to do. And I don't get it. I don't understand where that hate comes from. Now, they say slavery. They still say we still struggling from the slavery condition. But I really don't know. But I'm here to tell them, Mr. Sells, will you tell them?
One monkey won't stop this show.
Tell them again, Mr. Sells.
One monkey will not stop this show.
That's to my critics. That's to my critics. Because I feel like if you got a problem with me, let me get right to the point. I'm not going to mention no names, Dr. Porter.
All right.
The guy told me, say, from a certain radio station, I hear you talking, but it seems like to me you just talking about the problem. There's really no solution. Well, I got to address the problem. It's up to us to find a solution.
Yes.
And it's also up to some of the politicians in the community to find some of these solutions, because I'm not a politician. Now, I thought, Dr. Porter, when you vote for a politician and they get paid, that's their job. What you think, Dr. Porter?
Well, that's a lot of loaded questions, but let's deal with the last question that you just asked. And when you deal with politicians, you must understand that politicians actually, when you're dealing with politics, are there to preserve order, not necessarily there to change. One of the things that we as African Americans suffer from is the lack of being politically educated. We are more emotional than we are politically educated, and that causes a great problem. Our issue will never be resolved so far as the Black community as a whole in America through politics. We have to be group oriented. Politics is part of it, getting the right people in the right office. But if the system is the same, all you're doing is changing faces. It's the power that be behind the system that must begin to change. So when you put a politician in office, first of all, you have to understand that politics is backed by money. Many times we talk about the vote, but then we don't understand as Black people that it's the money that puts the politician into the office, not just the vote itself. So when that politician begins to get into office, then that politician is more beholden to the people who help sponsor him than just the people who might have just voted for him. Money is power. So politics is backed by money. We must understand that. We must understand, too, that you just don't vote for a person or put a person in office unless you understand their political game plan. Like I said before, we suffer from emotionalism, and we suffer from cliquishness, being really cliquish in the sense of this, that we have to like you. If we don't like you, then everything else seems to go out the window.
Damn shame.
I don't have to like a person for them to have a great plan and me to be able to deal with them and partner with them on certain things, because they may have a better plan. They may have the right plan to solve my solution. And just because I don't play pool with them, I don't shoot darts with them, I don't drink a beer with them, a lot of times with African Americans, that's more important than the policy at hand. That's more important than anything. We deal with entertainment messages in the sense that we like you to be popular. So we love people that we like to put people in office who we like, not necessarily because we're politically educated on what it is their platform stands for. So that's one of the issues that we have. And that's why we keep putting not only the wrong people into office, but we also put people into office who cannot carry out an agenda specifically for us, because guess what? Our monies did not back them. We have been told just to go and vote. It's more than that. When you understand politics, you have to understand money, and you have to put money behind a politician. So when that individual gets in office, doesn't matter if they're black or white, when he gets in office, he's going to be beholding to the people who actually put them there. And a lot of times what the African-American community doesn't fully understand, it's the money that put him there. Not necessarily just the votes, but it's the money structure that put them there. So that answers that particular question right there. When you talk about also individuals being divisive, so far as we are concerned as African Americans, well, part of it is slavery. It's called epigenetics. And epigenetics in my field is the study of being able to feel or to suffer from traumas throughout your generation. In other words, some of the traumas, some of the brainwashing, some of the techniques that were used on our people in slavery, we feel that through our generation. The problem with African Americans is that we never got healed. We've always been suffering from trauma. So not only did you receive trauma from slavery, you also received it during the Black Code era, Jim Crow, also received it all the way down through history. There has never been a let up. So we not only suffer from post-traumatic stress syndrome, which most people have suffered from one incident. Post-traumatic stress disorder is just one incident of trauma that usually you can get over through time and through counseling and through healing and through therapy. We suffer from that all the time, just being Black in America and in this world. But we also suffer from post-traumatic slave syndrome, which is what we call epigenetics. That is the trauma that our ancestors felt that now goes through the bloodline. It never stopped. So we have trauma on top of trauma. And so what you're seeing is not only trauma being functionalized in our society and have become normal. See, we have become normal. Our trauma has been normalized. So the behavior that we display, we think it's normal. We think it's Black culture, or it's just part of what we are because we've not known anything else, because our true identity was ripped from us. So therefore, many of us have multiple personality disorder or dissociative disorder, meaning we have an identity crisis. We don't really know who we are. And so every person of color has to almost go through a deep programming phase. They have to go through a phase where we can get healed from the trauma that they've suffered throughout life, as well as trauma that they don't know that came from their ancestry. You see the community, the Black community, all that it goes through, even educated people. Why can't we get together? We suffer from petty differences. This has been ingrained in us. We are programmed to be divisive toward each other. Now, let me say this with no disrespect intended at all. Caucasian America, Caucasian, whether it be Caucasian or it be Latino or whether it be Chinese or Asian, they operate under the guise of nepotism, okay, where no matter who they are, they don't have to be friends with somebody that looks like them. But if that person is qualified for something, or if they can help that person in any way, shape, or form, they're obligated to do so. They're going to do it, regardless if they play golf with them, if they know them personally, if they know their baby mama cousin, or they're in their family. It doesn't matter to them. They have a code to help and assist their race to gain power and to control and maintain power. We deal with inclusion of delusion. They deal with obtaining. They deal with obtaining. Their mindset is to accumulate. Our mindset is to assimilate. Okay, let me go further. So we have the other races and ethnicities. They deal with the mindset of nepotism. We deal with the mindset of nepotism, but backwards. We do it backwards. We operate with nepotism backwards as Black people. If we don't play golf with you, shoot beer with you, or whatever, we don't automatically we have an issue with you. And so therefore, without knowing where you're from, what you're about, what you do, if you're not in part of this little clique, then automatically there's a divisiveness. We're like an island unto ourselves. So we're only use nepotism when it's in our circle, which hinders our growth or our ability to be able to come together, because there's a psychosis there. Not only there's a psychosis there, but then there's the psychosis or the issue of jealousy. You have a strong issue of envy, and all of these things can be contributed to the pitting against each other. Who's better at this? Who's better at that? Who looks better? Whose hair is better? Who drives the best car? Who has the best clothes? Right. See, this is the psychosis of division that operates within the Black culture and society.
And let me ask you this, Doc. Hold on. Excuse me, but let me. You're hitting some nerves. You're hitting some nerves, and I like that. But let me say this too. Doesn't this trickle down to our youth? why they responding the way they doing in the streets with the murders, shooting at each other, not getting along? Isn't that trickled down from the older generation down to them? Because a lot of people want to point their fingers at the youth, saying, why they doing this? Why they doing that? Well, you got to look at us. You got to look at us. They young. How you feel about that, Doc?
You are so right. It does trickle down. And I think that another thing that we suffer from is accountability. We have to begin to learn to take accountability for our actions. We have this issue where we believe that other people should take care of our business or should do things for us.
Yeah.
And we need to get out of that mentality. And what we've done is there's been a lack of accountability. And since the destruction of the family has occurred, where the man has been taken out the home, the woman has become the head of the household, you see more of this destructive behavior. I don't have time to go into all of the psychosis of that right now, but I agree with you 100%. And then you have to understand the social engineering piece of the entertainment arena. The entertainment arena has been a very, very used tool to train our culture.
You're talking about the music, right?
The music as well as the television. It's called entertainment. It's not called entertainment. It's called entertainment. And what it's doing is training behavior. It's not anymore art imitating life. It's life imitating art. And what you're seeing is, and with the conjugation of subliminal messaging and music being a psychological tool, which is very powerful. That's why it's used in so many different arenas to help people lose weight and to do other things. Music is almost like magic. And so when you understand the power of music and then words and the vibrations of the body and how, that's why you see people who are rich or elegant, a lot of people who are aristocrats. Why do you think they dress up real nice to go to opera? Why do you think they do that? Because music has a direct effect on our body. It has a direct effect on how we think and how we perceive things. Now, you take that same music, like you do rap, and I like rap. I like certain things about rap. But see, we have to deal with things with a conscious level. We don't do that as Black people. We take that stuff as reality, and we make it a part of ourselves. And so we open ourselves up, and then we begin to try to imitate what we see being projected on the TV screens, as well as on the movie, as well as on in the as well as in the music industry. Let me say this one thing, and guess what? We don't own any of the television stations, and we do not own any of the record labels. So when the images that you see are out here like they are, as negative as they are, all the different type of twerking, all the different things that you see being projected to the world, it's one thing when we enjoy our own culture by ourselves. But when it's projected to the world, we're saying people of every other culture and ethnicity are looking at us with that type of image and saying that must be who they really are.
And exactly. And back in in those days of slavery, the masters used to call the young Black women out to entertain them. And they were known as Jezebels. And they were twerking for the masters in them back on the plantation.
There you go.
So we are still struggling from slavery. It's amazing, Dr. Porter. And another thing, I get what you're saying. I come from the streets, but you're right. We are emotional. But, I'm very passionate about people, man. And if I got a message, like I lost my sight to glaucoma, if I can reach 50,000 Black men in my community that's walking around and they don't know they have glaucoma, I should be able to report that and help them go to the doctor. But if I have a situation with a person who has that platform for me to go out there and try to save some of these Black men, and it's over a petty difference, they would choose the pettiness instead of me.
There you go.
Helping my people that should be more serious to us in our community to better us, but we let the little things come between us. And what else makes me very angry is that a lot of these people go into church and they be the first one to quote scriptures from the Bible and talk Jesus. But see, this is what I say, Dr. Porter. A lot of people talk Jesus, but they don't move like Jesus. They talk Allah, but they don't move like Allah. And this how I feel about them. Tell them, Mr. Sim.
One monkey won't stop this show.
That's right. Tell them again, Mr. Sim.
One monkey will never stop this show.
So I don't care who you know or whatever you try to do. So I really don't give a damn, Dr. Porter. I feel like this. I'm gonna help the people that are willing to help me. I'm going to join forces with the people that want to join forces with me, and we're going to get out here and try to save some lives. I don't have time for the nonsense. No, I'm not perfect. I have made many mistakes. Sometimes I say things and I jump to conclusions sometimes. I'm human.
Yeah.
But if I tell you I apologize and there's a misunderstanding, you should be able to wave the white flag and be able to sit down and talk with me. Now, let me switch it up. Now, if somebody stuck a gun in your face or threatened your life or beat you down, domestic abuse, or kidnap one of your kids, that's a different story. That's a different story. But if we having an argument over something, a misunderstanding over some he say, she say, you're a damn fool.
Yeah.
You're a damn fool. That's how I feel about it, Dr. Porter. Am I right or am I wrong, Dr. Porter?
LC, you are exactly right, sir. LC, you are right, because we have to understand that we have to live for something higher than ourselves.
Yeah.
As I said before, we miss the big picture many times, and many times because we miss the big picture, because we deal with egotism. Many of us deal with, that's very strong, our egos and those types of things, our attitudes, because we really don't own anything. And so we're very protective of the little thing that we have. We always think someone is out to get us. And we have to learn how to forgive also. And I think that a lot of times when you mention about people going into the church and then the church not changing them, the one thing that I always have wondered, and I like to counsel the church because I believe the church has a strong identity problem, because the reason the church is so weak, one reason is because you have a lot of dysfunctional people who begin to spiritualize their psychosis. And a preacher is not a clinician. I'm a clinician. Preachers are not clinicians per se. Maybe there are a few that might be able to, they have that education of that era or that experience, but they're not clinicians. And a lot of times people begin to cross things over or mix things, and they begin to put a glaze. In fact, I believe Jesus quoted to the Sadducees and Pharisees. He said, "You're like whitewashed tombs." In other words, you're whitewashed. You look good on the outside, but you're dead on the inside. Yeah. And many times that's what a lot of our people are. They need healing. Our people are hurting, and we need healing, and we need to be set free from a lot of traumas and a lot of ailments that we suffer from. There's a lot of mental and emotional help that's needed. And a lot of times when people go into the church, they're so dysfunctional. All they do is spiritualize their pain. They never get real help from it. And they're not able to really receive and understand the good book, because how can a person who is traumatized or in pain, how can they really understand what the book is really talking about? They're just looking for a quick fix. They're looking to be helped immediately, but they're not looking to transform themselves into the image that the good book talks about. And so it's about transformation. We need to change. So, LC, I agree with you totally. We have to be able to forgive, put aside our petty differences, understand that we are all in this together. But until we see each other as a collective, LC, until we see each other as part of each other, that's going to be difficult.
Yeah, it's real difficult now. But like I'm going to say this before we go to a commercial break. I'm going to stand on mine, Dr. Porter. They can walk around here like the purge all day. But I'm going to flex and clap back. You try to infect me. I'm going to flex and clap back. If you're going to try to infect me, all these zombies walking around here, if you can't see the better for people and you want to put the petty difference ahead before people, I'm going to say it again. You're a damn fool. And tell them, Mr. Sims.
One monkey will never stop this ship.
We will be back after this commercial break, and we'll have our guest host, OG Ricky Wisdom.
From the
Blind City, the podcast with Dr. Porter. We are the therapy for these streets.
Hey friends, are you overwhelmed by 24/7 time with the kids? Or perhaps you feel all alone? Do you find yourself worrying too much or struggling to sleep? We're not just living through the COVID-19 pandemic. We're also living through an unprecedented mental health crisis. Now might be the time to talk to a licensed therapist. Go to Talkspace.com and get started today. Talkspace, therapy for all.
Thoughts of suicide may feel impossible to overcome, but with help and support, you can find hope and meaning. Call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-TALK to speak to a counselor, or visit suicidepreventionlifeline.org. It's free, it's confidential, It's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And even if it feels like it, you're not alone.
Langford Cunningham is really an inspiration.
Mr. Langford Cunningham.
Blind City, the podcast. It's headed up by a guy named Langford Cunningham. He had to lose his sight to find his vision.
Blind City, the podcast. I have an amazing guest, Corey Bush, Mike Brown Sr., Demetrius Johnson. How you doing? Her name is Red.
Everybody got their ops, everybody got their enemies, but for real, now you don't even got to worry about your enemy. It be, the closest motherfuckers around you.
No, this is real. We getting shot by police. We getting stereotyped.
We didn't get a proper investigation. Well, definitely, I think it's a bunch of bullshit.
Your car got shot up, right?
Yeah, he dropped the bullet.
Yeah, you from the hood.
They just passed a law where you can give a kid a gun without the parents' permission.
Wait a minute. They can do what? We got people in power that's not really for the people. They think the people work for them. You work for the people.
We got to talk about the disparities in our community.
Northside looked like a bomb didn't hit it.
If you found this content helpful, subscribe to our YouTube channel, Blind City, the podcast.
Welcome back to the city. Blind City, the podcast. I'm your host, Langford Cunningham, along with Dr. Porter. And we also have another special guest that just rolled up to the city. He's my guest host for today, OG Ricky Wisdom. How you doing, Ricky Wisdom?
Hey, what's up, brother? What's up?
Oh, man. Blessing blind, brother. Blessing blind. Enjoying God, still praising God, going through the storm, man.
Hey, man.
Dr. Porter and OG Ricky Wisdom, we had a situation the other day with the riots in Washington, D.C. Trump supporters stormed the Capitol. And, I couldn't see it, but I heard it. I was listening to CNN on my smart speaker. You guys actually seen it with your eyes, and I had people calling me and telling me about it. And to my white people out there, I know there's a lot of good white people out there. Just with any people. You got good seeds and you got bad seeds and you got confused seeds. And but if yesterday wasn't displaying white privilege, I don't know what else could have really been more detailed than that. Ricky Wisdom, what you think?
I think everybody ought to be able to see the disparity in this country as law enforcement or even crowd control. Let's just call it crowd control would go. This riot demonstration supposedly had been forecasted for a long time. It wasn't like it just rolled up out of nowhere. They knew that thousands of people were going to be coming. They understood that the president had called for protests and aggravated protests. They understood that, but yet yesterday they had just a few people on standby to protect the Capitol. So and everybody's comparing it to Black Lives Matter protests back in the summer when they had tons of armed guards surrounding the Capitol. And yet yesterday they only had just the Capitol Police, and they weren't in riot gear. It was amazing to know that you're going to have that kind of crowd and no one to guard the Congress. It was amazing, and it showed what white privilege and the difference between the mentality of what people consider a threat.
Well, before I go to Dr. Porter, some of them will beg to differ. They would say Black Lives Matters were looting the stores. They'll say, "Oh, that's black. They loot the stores," and that's not necessarily the case. You just had some. What's the word, Dr. Porter? Provocateurs. What is it?
Provocateurs, yeah.
Provocateurs. But they would say that's provocateurs, right? They would say, "Oh, that's Black Lives Matter." Well, Dr. Porter, how do you feel? Because what I noticed, when we get in large numbers, and if we came on those steps and ran up in that building, they would have brought out the tanks, the German Shepherds, and the tear gas, and maybe shot. More than 4 people would have been dead if it was all black folks. I remember when the Black Panthers walked onto Capitol Hill with their ammunition, and it wasn't even loaded. And all of them damn near dead.
Mm-hmm. Well, I tell you what, Elsie, I agree with everything that's been said on the panel, but let's go deeper. What you're looking at and what you're seeing is a display of, or another form of reinforcement of trauma. And subliminally, what you're seeing is the programming and the display of showing the masses who really has power and who really doesn't. When you constantly see, why do you think they allow these things on social media to be seen over and over and over again? It's because it wants to pull down the morale. It wants to take the breath out of the Black community, out of those who try to do protest, whether it be the NBA or other agencies or other organizations around the country who put so much effort into trying to allegedly bring awareness to these things. They put a lot of effort and energy into it. And when they saw what they saw, guess what it did to most people psychologically and emotionally? It deflated them. It's brought a sense of hopelessness. See, that's the biggest game plan. Well, I want to tear you down psychologically. I want to take your drive from you. I want to take your passion from you. I want to make you feel like there is no hope, so that you won't organize, you won't get together, because every time that you do, and we're something is going to happen to say it's not helping, it's not working. And in my field, it's called the anti-Black syndrome, where now you have a lot of us who are looking at things and saying there's no hope. This is why you see a lot of our women just sell out. No matter what, they just sell their bodies out. They just sell out. They don't care what they do for $1 now. A lot of our Black men, they don't care what they do for $1 now, because they look at life and they say, it's not worth it. It's not going to help. Voting is not going to help. Nothing is going to help. So what you're seeing displayed was enablers. Those individuals were enabled. When Brother OG said that the police were not in their gear, they weren't ready for that, even though they had a heads up on it. Well, of course they knew that was coming. Probably was planned, because nothing is just done by chance. We have too much technology now. We have Big Brother watching. We have too many advancements, and we know too many different things. In fact, the powers that be are probably 30 years ahead of us, even in technology. There are things that we don't even know about probably that already exist among us. So we're in the midst of a game. There's a big game that's being played, and we have to look deeper than just on the surface level. All of these things are being played out in the social media, where you see the young man being killed in the car with his daughter and his children, and Philando Castile, Mike Brown. Then you talk about Floyd, and then you talk about Breonna Stewart, and then you talk about just many others, just being shot, and you get these things over and over and over replay. What is that doing? That's reinforcing trauma. It's bringing about a level of hopelessness. And so when you see that particular group being able to storm the Capitol and run roughshod and just have all that type of privilege, well, it's not only white privilege. What it's doing in effect, it's also reinforcing the hopelessness and helplessness to those of us who are of color, so that we can get to a point to where we are broken. In fact, when you break a person's will, you break a person's spirit, and you've broken them. And that's really the key to this. It's not just about those things are just surface stuff. The substratum of it all, the thing that's an undergirdment of this, is that they want to take the air out of any movement for Black unity, for Black accomplishment, and for Black equality. And to do that, I need to break your spirit. And that's really the real agenda behind it.
And you know what? You're right, Dr. Porter, because I said in a lot of radio interviews with the youth, when you come from a broken home, a broken community, and a broken education system, where do you find hope? If all you know is hopelessness, and the music you listen to is hopelessness, how do you pull yourself out of that hole if you don't know nobody with hope? And it seems like the people with no hope are all flocking together. It's sad. Right. What you think about that, OG Ricky Wisdom?
Yeah, that's a word. I think one of the other things that we have to watch out for, though, is yesterday we got the results of the Georgia election, and we had a positive note because for the first time in, I think, recorded history, first time recorded history, a Black man in Georgia wins the Senate. And we know how the history of Georgia and voter suppression and all that has gone down in the past, all that good news was squashed yesterday when we had the riot in Washington, D.C. Now, we had an opportunity to say, well, look at this. The folk in Georgia actually came together, overcame the odds, overcome the voter suppression, and have elected a black man as a senator. We had something to actually celebrate yesterday. But in the midst of the celebration, here comes that thing that causes hopelessness again. Yesterday should have been a high day for us coming together as a people and saying, look, we can do this.
Well, what you think about that, Dr. Porter? We right back at the starting gate. Baby mama's twerking, baby daddies ain't working.
Well, LC, I tell you what we have to when Brother OG said what he said, he's right. In one sense, we have to understand a few things, and let me go a little bit deeper again. When we look at what happened, we also have to look at what the Department of Justice was doing also in the same vein or in the same course of all of these actions. We were being distracted also from the Department of Justice, who were undoing civil rights laws that had been put in place for us for years. See, and so we have to realize that when you look at a smoke screen, you got to go behind to see what the real agendas are taking place. But a lot of times, too, even with the brother being voted into the Senate, that's beautiful. But as I stated before, we have to also put an ear up and the eyes open when we see African Americans that get into these seats. Because if our money, it just can't be the vote. If our money didn't put them there, then their ears have to be beholding to the ones who helped to fund their campaign, who helped to get them into office, not through just votes, but through finances. And so a lot of times what we have seen, no disrespect to anyone, because I like to deal in reality. I like to deal in facts. And a lot of times people get offended when you deal with it. And I've done many seminars where a lot of my Caucasian brothers and sisters get upset about dealing with the realities. But the realities of this, when you're dealing with white racist supremacy, you have to realize that a lot of times white racist supremacy acts happen most on the watch or when a black person is in office. You get most of your white racism acts during the time period when a black person is the face of the office. We can look at the Obama. We can look at his stint in the White House, and we saw the things that happened there that transpired. And we can go all the way back to a lot of our mayors in our cities and see that crime a lot of times was up higher. Different things transpired even higher while there was a black person in office. So you have to be careful when we talk about it's beautiful, but we can't be image conscious. It's a beautiful thing to see a black man or a black woman in office, but it can't stop there. That can't be what we can't be relegated to symbolism. And a lot of times as black people, we're relegated to symbolisms. Oh, wow, we got this, or we drive this, just like with our clothes and our cars, with our children. They associate their identity with a lot of times with things. And just because one black person is rich or one black person or two black people get in office, that doesn't permeate the rest of the race. You can't just take that and say, ooh, we're in office. No, we're not in office. He or she is in office. Now, are there plans and practices are going to be conducive to help us come together and to produce a positive plan in order to help us to become and to get a part of this equality of America. So I'll say that. So there was a distraction there. Most people don't know about the Department of Justice and what they were doing to undo civil rights laws. That means the Jim Crow laws that were taken into place. They are undoing those things. They're trying to undo those things. And as you very well know, they've never dealt with lynching. They've never taken that off or dealt with that. So lynching is still a law. It's still you can still lynch people in this America today. That's something we have to think about. And so the next thing real quickly that I will say also is this, is that we have to understand that if we're going to become healed and that we're going to become together, we have to stay focused on our agenda. We need think tanks. We need to make sure that we're projecting images in front of our children, in front of other people that are positive, and that we make sure that we understand we have to help each other. But we are still, and I reiterate this, still looking at someone else to help us be better. Then that's when we begin to by the wayside. Your oppressor is never going to help you. And no disrespect, because as LC, as you said, we're not talking about all Caucasians. We're not talking about all people, people of all certain pigmentations. That's ludicrous. But we are talking about a structure. We are talking about a system that's in place, and we know who runs that system. And so that is the reality of the world that we live in. We must get out of the delusion of inclusion, and we must understand that we're prisoners of war. So, and all of this goes back to slavery. Whenever the master really wanted to do damage to the slaves, he would put a black person there over them. The black person was always the hardest past master, because he was trying to prove something to the master. He would get the black person to beat the other black person many times. Why did he do that? That's a psychological ploy and a trick that also causes hopelessness, because when you have a black man or a black woman in office, immediately we think there's going to be some type of change. When that change does not happen, and we just automatically say it's going to be a change now. Okay, good, we got it, we've done it. Then guess what happens if change doesn't take place? You have that same cycle of insanity, meaning you get depressed, you get let down all over again, and that spirit of hopelessness is there. So this game is played in many different directions, and we got to keep our eyes open.
And that's where that in-house racism starts too, because the guy he had in the plantation in slavery was the dark-skinned brother that had the whip for the other men in the plantation field, and the light-skinned brother drove the stagecoach for the master, and the light-skinned woman was in the house serving lemonade, right?
That's where you get your division. And we all understand and know about the Willie Lynch letter. Some say it's not real, some say it is real. But the methodologies that were executed in that particular letter is very simplistic, but very diabolical. And many people are aware of that. When you look and understand the methodologies that were used, so far as on us as we're concerned, it said even in that letter that these things would last thousands of years, and we wouldn't even have to redo them. We wouldn't have to reoppress the people, that we would reoppress ourselves because of the dysfunctionality and the trauma that we've suffered. That's what you're seeing playing out right now. Truly, the more things change, the more things stay the same. If we don't get real healing, if we don't get real therapy, that's why I applaud you, LC, for bringing me on, because we really need therapy. You know, we have been told that it was taboo to go see a therapist or to go see somebody.
Correct.
And so what we've done is try, and nothing wrong. I love the church, grew up in the church, love the church, but most preachers are not clinicians. It's a difference. And a lot of preachers are having trouble with their congregations, and they're wondering why. And they're saying it's the devil. A lot of times it's because people are psychologically and emotionally unstable, and therefore they're not disciplined. They don't want to be led. Everybody's arrogant and prideful. Everybody thinks they know everything. And a lot of these things come from the influence of the world and the social engineering that they're seeing around them. And it goes into the house of God. We need the ministry of God. We really do. Every great movement came from the church. It came from a man of God or a woman of God. Every great movement came from there. So you don't destroy that institution, but that institution does need a lot of healing.
OG Wicked Wisdom?
Yeah. Yeah, you said something, Dr. Porter. You said something. It used to be that Big Mama and Grandmama and Granddaddy and them were able to instill that wisdom that they had growing up during Jim Crow and give us understanding of how to navigate in this world. But they're gone, and the collective wisdom that they had is really, really fading away. The hip-hop generation, I guess you would call it, the hip-hop generation that are now having grandchildren, the amount of wisdom that they're able to, and not just wisdom, but training and morals, ethics that they're able to pass down to their children is, it's been so diminished that that which the older generation, the strong generation, the baby boomers got, it's no longer there. It's no longer viable. It might still be a little bit of it there, but it's no longer viable, even in the church. And so the wisdom that we should have, the guidance that we should have, that family structure that kept us together when we used to have the extended family within the confines of one house, big mama and granddaddy, and then mama and daddy, and then the children. All of that growing up together gave us that glue that we needed, and the wisdom of the elders passed down, and we got it. It trickled down. But now that wisdom is so diminished that we've got problems, because now people are learning from videos. They're learning from movies. They're learning from the street. They're learning from the mass media, and there's no real morality or ethics that are connected with it, or even any kind of wisdom that gets us to a place that says, I need some therapy.
That's good. That's good. We're gonna go to a break in a minute, but let me say this, and we're gonna finish up with Dr. Porter and OG Ricky Wisdom. Let me just say this: as far as the hip hop generation, you're absolutely right, Ricky Wisdom. You know, when Run DMC came out with My Adidas, we bought Adidas. You know, when NWA said F the police, we all said F the police. So hip hop has been that driving force of confidence for us, and it came from the streets. And we know a lot of things that come from the streets are not positive. A lot of rappers, and in that era of the 80s and 90s, we looked up to the drug dealers. We liked their cars, we liked the women, we liked the jewelry they had on. So the guys that rap knew they were too scared to sell drugs, but they could rap. That's why they dressed like the drug dealer, with the big gold chains back in the 80s and 90s. And now it has speeded up to the younger generation where they don't look up to the drug dealer. They doing drugs. When you did drugs, When I came up, if you called yourself a crackhead, they'll shoot you, man. They'll straight shoot you. You couldn't call yourself a crackhead in my time. You got laughed at or got beat up. But today, this generation, hey, man, they own pills. They own the Percocets. They listening to music that's telling them to take drugs now. So hip-hop has always been that driving force, but always remember, it came from the streets. And everything that comes from the streets wasn't positive, brother. And also, I just want to say this before we go to the commercial. You're right, for us, the clothes, the designers. We felt we had to wear the designers. That's what the women wanted. The women is the driving force for men. So in hip-hop, the women didn't talk to the guy with the flood pants. She didn't talk to the guy that didn't have the designers on. She talked to the guy that had the polos, had the Gucci. So as young boys, you're going to float to what the women like. I told a girl the other day, she's a prostitute, and she sells her coochie at Family Dollar prices. I said, how much you laying down, baby? She say $30. And the only thing I could say to lift her up, because if I told her, you can do better than that, go to trade school, become a registered nurse. She just looked at me like I was talking Chinese. But when I said, treat your coochie like it's Gucci, she started to laugh. We'll be right back. Blind City, the podcast.
Hey friends, are you overwhelmed by 24/7 time with the kids? Or perhaps you feel all alone? Do you find yourself worrying too much or struggling to sleep? We're not just living through the COVID-19 pandemic. We're also living through an unprecedented mental health crisis. Now might be the time to talk to a licensed therapist. Go to Talkspace.com and get started today. Talkspace, therapy for all.
Thoughts of suicide may feel impossible to overcome, but with help and support, you can find hope and meaning. Call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-TALK to speak to a counselor, or visit suicidepreventionlifeline.org. It's free, it's confidential, it's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And even if it feels like it, you're not alone.
Langford Cunningham is really an inspiration.
Mr. Langford Cunningham.
Blind City, the podcast. It's headed up by a guy named Langford Cunningham. He had to lose his sight to find his vision.
Blind City, the podcast. I have an amazing guest, Corey Bush, Mike Brown Sr., Demetrius Johnson. How you doing? Her name is Red.
Everybody got their ops. Everybody got their enemies. But for real, now you don't even got to worry about your enemy. It be, the closest motherfucker around you.
No, this is real. We getting shot by police. We getting stereotyped.
We didn't get a proper investigation. Well, definitely, I think it's a bunch of bullshit.
Your car got shot up, right?
Yeah, he struck the bullet.
Yeah, you from the hood.
They just passed a law where you can give a kid a gun without the parent's permission.
Wait a minute. They can do what? We got people in power that's not really for the people. They think the people work for them. You work for the people.
We got to talk about the disparities in our community.
Northside looked like a bomb didn't hit it.
If you found this content helpful, subscribe to our YouTube channel, Blind City, the podcast.
Welcome back to the city, Blind City, the podcast, with OG Ricky Wisdom and Dr. Porter, who is now part of the Blind City residents. Thank you, Dr. Porter, for becoming part of this team. And now we're going to address another critical issue. We're going to talk about the vaccine. This virus has taken out a lot of people. I have really lost a close friend last week by the name of Izola Hamilton. She was like a second mother to me. She kept me in her house for 2 years when I was having problems with my mother and my father as a teenager. And if it wasn't for her, I'd have been homeless during those critical years. So she really saved my life and helped me put my life on the right journey when I was young as a teenager. And that's why I tell people, sometimes we got to extend that olive branch to our children, even though we don't understand them, even though their pants might be sagging, even though they might be running from the police, stealing cars. You never know if you pay attention and say one thing to them or buy them a little dinner or something, but extend that olive branch. That might be the changing point of their life. Dr. Porter, OG Ricky Wisdom, are you going to take the vaccine, Dr. Porter?
I'm undecided about that, but as of right now, I don't think that I'm going to take it.
Why not?
I have a lot of theories regarding this whole COVID-19 situation, which we do not have time to explore. And I believe that there's not enough, to me, prudent evidence. It's too many conflictions. And, when we deal with a lot of conflictions and confusions, if I'm going to put something in my body, I need to have a full understanding of what the problem is in the first place. For me personally, and I am a clinician, I am in the medical field in the world, but there are just too many unanswered questions, not only with the virus itself, the continuous diagnosis, it does this, it does that, the inconsistencies in testing, that you see going on all the time, how did it start? Even that raises questions to me, where it in actuality, you have different theories on that. It's so many different things that are not unconclusive that I have questions about that a lot of times I'm not getting answers for. And there are some things that I'm privy to know as well, being a clinician, being associated with several people in the medical field that also raise different questions as well. Now they're talking about a different strand. And many times, and I'm going to say this, not to scare anyone, you do what you feel you need to do to be safe. We want everyone to be safe. But a lot of the practices that they have us doing do not prove effective and operating or dealing with the virus per se. It just raises questions. A lot of the things that they're having us to do, they do not prove that these things are necessarily effective in dealing with the so-called virus. Viruses move a certain way. I went to school. I'm a doctor. And so I understand certain things. I believe we have more of a fear campaign operating than anything else. And I don't want to put anything in my body because usually it takes a lot of years to get a vaccine to deal with something that, deal with a real vaccine and get it approved. But now you have 7 different types of vaccines. This company's making a vaccine, that company's making a vaccine. It just raises too many questions for me. So at this time, I'll do all the safe practices that are required because I want other people to feel safe around me. I want other people to feel comfortable. So I'm going to always do things to make sure that I'm healthy, my family's healthy, and I help other people according to the guidelines that's been put in place. I will do that. But there's still a lot of questions with those, and there's still a lot of questions with these different types of vaccines. And when a person like a Bill Gates comes in and talks about and says to me, he was a person that's in the technological field, he's not even in the medical field, but when he and Mark Zuckerberg and individuals like that are leading the charge concerning vaccinations and being vaccines, and he predicted long time ago, years ago, he said half the world, or 67% or 70% of the world, is going to have to become vaccinated before we go back to normalcy. Well, that raises a question, because I'm trying to figure out, how did he get into the medical world, and how is his voice louder than everyone else's? So that raises a question to me of why in the world is this guy who's a computer, if he can fix the vaccine, the virus in his computers first, then I might be more inclined to fix the vaccine in my body. But if he's not even able to fix the viruses in his computers, I don't know if he can fix the viruses in my body. So that right there is questionable to me at best. Why would a person as a tech giant, all of a sudden, he's the leader, he's the world foremost leader on vaccines, experimenting in Africa, things of that, so which they've had a lot of pushback in Africa from doing those experiments over there, and now they're bringing it to the United States. This whole thing, I call it a plandemic, not a pandemic. And I believe, and I know something is out there. I'm just being honest. Hey, this is Blind City, the podcast. We keep it 100. We keep it 100.
That's right.
I believe it's a plandemic, not a pandemic per se. And I believe there's a lot of felonious things operating out here. And so I believe that there's a fear that's being permeated. Once again, what does this do when you promote the spirit of fear? Okay, it brings down your immune system. It lowers your ability to think. That in itself, the stress of that, the anxiety of that, those things in itself makes you sick. That fear, the restrictions, all of these things you got to do, the do's and the don'ts, your way of life completely changed, economic structure being broken down. People losing their jobs left and right, can't provide for their family. Those things in itself will kill you. And so when we talk about, a virus that came from somewhere that they can't fully explain, first it came from China, then it was born in a lab, then it was this, then you have all these theories out here, and yet you're so sure that this vaccine will help us get back to normal. It just throws too many questions to me, and I think the American people should open their eyes and ask more questions, because just to go along to get along, that's dangerous, because you're almost one step away from being in tyranny, and living under a tyrannical rule. And so we have to be careful of that. So I know I was a little elaborate on it, but I wanted to give an understanding to the people. I didn't want to just say yes and no, because I'm being superficial.
Right.
I've thought this through. There's so many different variances that are involved here. Facts. Therefore, I will take a step back before I think I take the vaccination.
Yeah, that was a great explanation. A lot of facts with that. You backed it up. I hope the people realize and take that information, because right now, man, they walking around like it's the purge out there, man. OG Ricky Wisdom, you taking a vaccine?
Well, I think I'm going to do what Dr. Porter said. I'm going to wait to hear more information, more understanding of what it's about. So I'm going to give it probably to the middle of 2021, and if there's not a lot of side effects from the public going on, I'll go ahead and I'll get the shot.
Well, Blind City, the podcast. I hope people, you take a lot from this episode. About me taking the vaccine, I really don't know, because right now I'm on Dr. Sebi, and I haven't had no problems. That black seed oil, that lactoferrin. What else I'm taking? Vitamin C, vitamin D pills. I've been pretty much healthy and blessed. I mean, I'm blind. I don't need nothing else to go wrong with me, Dr. Porter. But anyway, we'll be right back after this commercial break, and I'll wrap the show up. Blind City, the podcast. I'm your host, Langford Cunningham, along with Dr. Porter and my man, OG Ricky Wisdom. We'll be right back.
Hey friends, are you overwhelmed by 24/7 time with the kids? Or perhaps you feel all alone? Do you find yourself worrying too much? or struggling to sleep? We're not just living through the COVID-19 pandemic, we're also living through an unprecedented mental health crisis. Now might be the time to talk to a licensed therapist. Go to Talkspace.com and get started today. Talkspace, therapy for all.
Thoughts of suicide may feel impossible to overcome, but with help and support, you can find hope and meaning. Call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-TALK to speak to a counselor, or visit suicidepreventionlifeline.org. It's free, it's confidential, it's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And even if it feels like it, you're not alone.
Langford Cunningham is really an inspiration.
Mr. Langford Cunningham.
Blind City, the podcast. It's headed up by a guy named Langford Cunningham. He had to lose his sight to find his vision.
Blind City, the podcast. I have an amazing guest, Corey Bush, Mike Brown Sr., Demetrius Johnson. How you doing? Her name is Red.
Everybody got their ops, everybody got their enemies, but for real, now you don't even gotta worry about your enemy. It be, the closest motherfuckers around you.
No, this is real. We getting shot by police. We getting stereotyped.
We didn't get a proper investigation. Well, definitely, I think it's a bunch of bullshit.
Your car got shot up, right?
Yeah, he struck the bullet.
Yeah, you from the hood.
They just passed a law where you can give a kid a gun without the parents' permission.
Wait a minute. They can do what? We got people in power that's not really for the people. They think the people work for them. You work for the people.
We got to talk about the disparities in our community.
Northside look like a bomb didn't hit it.
If you found this content helpful, subscribe to our YouTube channel, Blind City, the podcast.
Blind City, the podcast. OG Ricky Wisdom and Dr. Porter. This was an amazing show today. And I just want to talk about some things and just let the people know that what I do is give information to the people. That's it. I'm not trying to be no star. I'm not trying to be no YouTube star, no podcast star. When I lost my sight, I wanted to use my disability as a strength to empower my community. That's it. I had no idea I was going to run into a lot of roadblocks from my own people. But then I saw Martin Luther King, Malcolm X. They had the same struggle with our own people. Not just the oppressors, but us. And I hope we can get to a point where we treat each other better. Because sometimes we wonder why the world don't treat us better. I think sometimes they watch us how we treat each other. And I know you can't get respect if we don't treat each other right. And sometimes people think that's the right way to treat us, on how we treat each other. So I just hope you take something out of this episode to change out of your life. Because every day we're supposed to better ourselves in some type of way. And I'm not seeing that. And the reason I'm not seeing that, because when I had sight, I had no vision. I had to lose my sight to find my vision. That's all I have to say. As far as the vaccine, I hope you take what Dr. Porter had to say and OG Ricky Wisdom, and then come to your decision and really evaluate and analyze what is going on, because it seems like everybody's playing chess and we're the pawns. The vaccine. Will we take the needle? Because we already dying by the bullets. This is Blind City, the podcast.
If you found this content helpful, please share this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Blind City, the podcast. You can find us on all social media platforms.